Good morning from just outside of Moab, Utah. Today, going to be hiking Fisher Towers Trail. For a full guide on this hike, check the link in the description below. We're parked at the lower lot here. There's another one right up there. The towers you can kind of see right off the bat. So this hike should be about 4.5 miles with like 800 feet of elevation gain, and obviously we'll give you different perspectives on the Fisher Towers here. This is, I would say, a popular hike, but nothing like Arches or Corona Arch or some of the other ones in the area, so should be able to get a little reprieve from some of the other crowds here. Shout out to all the people who recommended this hike as well. Always appreciate recommendations, so if you have more for the Moab area, definitely drop them here. I have a ton of hikes in Utah, not as many in Moab, but you can check out that playlist for all kinds of Utah related stuff. So there is a kind of a primitive hiking loop here that you can take kind of around and back. Not necessary if you don't want to. Adds about a little under 2 miles to your hike. Just about a mile into the hike here, you have an 8-foot ladder, so it could be a little tricky for dogs and anybody who doesn't like to scramble. We'll show you how we get Aria down, and in advance it might not be the prettiest, but she has a harness as well, so please keep that in mind. Okay. It's an iffy one for dogs. If your dog is like able to jump larger distances, like maybe a 3-4 foot gap, then they don't even need to be lowered. But I would say, based on what I'm anticipating, the lowering of her down is going to be more difficult than getting her back up, if that makes sense. Just a quick note before we get people in the comments saying my distance was way different or elevation was way different. You have to keep in mind that most of our GPS devices are pretty poor in canyon situations, so take a look at your line after to see if you bounce around, and that can easily add distance and climbing that you didn't actually do. So almost at the end here. I think we're just going to end somewhere around here as a viewpoint. The desert is so pretty. Those of you who have not heard me say this before, I grew up in southern New Hampshire. We live in Colorado now, but the desert is such a foreign thing to me. And the smallest, even like views like down in there, novelties of it, just still, I'm not jaded at all. And even looking in the shot behind me, it's such a cool place and so diverse. And even though Moab itself is not my favorite, the desert and the hiking and the accessibility to such a big town is pretty rare in the western United States. So it's why it's such a mecca here, because if you like to hike, if you like to rock climb, if you like to bike, run, trail run, little window there, just has everything, and then there's a massive town with 2 national parks there too. Pretty obvious end of the trail. My stats are a little off, but I would say in general 2.2 miles and probably about 800 feet of elevation gain. I would say this is an excellent hike. If I had a tip, because you watched pretty much to the end here, my tip would be hit this. Obviously, you want to try to avoid summer months if you can, and in general, you can hike this in the morning because the shade over there will keep it shaded to about noon when the sun obviously gets above you. But with dogs, I'm kind of torn. I think it's dog friendly, but you definitely have to be able to negotiate your dog up and down that ladder. That is the only difficult part for dogs. And for the wrong people, it could not work. So I showed you it. You know how to judge your animal and make that decision for yourself. But an excellent hike here, and later in the day there's definitely more people here, but we're here at the end of the hike with no one. Really, really pretty. Always be respectful when you fly, and I have a video talking about where and when you can and can't fly on the channel as well. We're gonna head back to the car here. I don't show end of hikes if it's the same as the beginning. If you're new to my channel, I do virtual trail guides based in Colorado, but I have a ton of stuff here in Utah, a whole section of my website dedicated to Utah hikes, and of course a playlist on the channel as well, so definitely check those out. To help support the channel through a Patreon where I offer trip planning and answer any of your questions about really anything hiking related, you can check that out. And then I have gear to help keep the channel alive as well. On behalf of a very sleepy Aria here, Jackie and myself, thank you so much for watching, and as always, we'll see you guys on the next adventure.